One question, one answer, and a stunned silence. It happened live, in front of millions, on one of the biggest stages in American television. Stephen Colbert, known for charm, wit, and never shying away from tough political questions, leaned in and asked it directly. His voice was calm, but everyone in the room felt the weight of what he was about to say. Does Israel have the right to exist? The studio fell quiet. You could hear the tension in the air, thick and uneasy. Even Colbert's trademark grin seemed to pause, waiting to see what the young man sitting across from him would say. Zohran Mamdani did not flinch. He did not dodge. He did not deliver a polished political soundbite. He looked Colbert in the eye and answered the question. What he said next, no one saw coming. Not the host, not the audience, not the millions watching at home. Because Mamdani, a rising star in New York politics and a current candidate in the 2025 mayoral race, chose not to play it safe. He chose not to walk the line or read from a script. He answered with clarity, with calm, and with the kind of moral courage that rarely makes it past the editing room. This was not just another TV moment. This was a turning point, a flash of honesty in a world full of noise, and it was all caught on camera. The internet exploded within minutes. Some cheered, some were furious, some were just shocked that someone actually said it out loud. But one thing was clear. Whether you agree with him or not, Zohran Mamdani made you stop and think. And that, in politics today, is rare. This is the story behind the viral moment, the truth behind the headline. The full picture the mainstream clips never show you. Before we unpack the moment that has the internet on fire, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We are diving deep into bold voices, raw politics, in moments the mainstream media will not replay twice. Zohran Mamdani was not born into power. He was born into purpose. His father was an Indian Muslim who moved to New York with little more than a suitcase and hope. His mother came from Uganda, carrying with her a story of exile, resilience, and strength. They settled in Queens, raised their son in a small apartment, and taught him the value of justice from the dinner table. Not the kind of justice you see on campaign signs, but the kind that comes from struggle, dignity, and knowing where you came from. Zohran did not go to school dreaming of politics. He studied film, he made music, he worked as a foreclosure prevention counselor. That is where he saw firsthand how systems fail ordinary people. He listened to stories of families being pushed out of their homes and neighborhoods changing overnight. He saw that people were not just being priced out, they were being pushed out. And something in him changed. He realized that telling stories was not enough. He needed to step into the fight. In 2020, he ran for the New York State Assembly from Astoria. No one thought he had a real shot. He was young. He was too bold. He refused corporate money. He spoke openly about Palestine, policing, and capitalism. That scared people. But he won. Not because he played the game. He won because he broke the rules that kept so many people out of politics in the first place. Since then, Zohran has become one of the most outspoken voices in New York politics. He has marched for Gaza. He has stood with tenants. He has gone toe-to-toe with billionaires. And he has done it all without hiding who he is. A Muslim, an immigrant's son, a believer in justice that includes everyone. Now, in 2025, he is running for mayor of New York City, and he is not softening his message. He is calling for a city that puts people before profits. He is talking about building public housing, ending broken policing, and confronting hate with real solutions. To some, he is too radical. To others, he is the first person who actually sounds like them. Zohran's campaign is not about pleasing the press or staying safe. It is about being honest, even when it costs you. It is about refusing to be quiet when something feels wrong. That is what made his answer on Colbert so powerful. He did not just say what was easy. He said what he believed. If you believe politics needs more truth and less noise, subscribe now. We cover stories that challenge the narrative. The lights were bright, the music faded. The crowd settled in, some still laughing from Colbert's last joke, but the energy shifted the moment Zohran Mamdani walked on stage. He was calm, composed, and ready. Not stiff like a politician trying to please everyone. He looked like someone who came with something real to say. Stephen Colbert leaned forward in his chair. You could tell he respected Mamdani, but he was not going to let him off easy. That was not his style. The audience was quiet now, leaning in. They knew something serious was coming. Colbert started by setting the stage. He talked about the ongoing crisis in Gaza, about the protests in New York, about the deep political divide gripping the country. Then, without any dramatic buildup, he asked the question, "Let us talk about Israel and Gaza." He said, "Do you believe Israel has the right to exist?" That one question landed hard. It was the kind of question most politicians try to dodge, the kind that makes people choose between headlines and truth. But Mamdani did not hesitate. He did not blink. He answered clearly. Yes, he said, I believe Israel has the right to exist, and like every nation, it must uphold international law. There was a pause, not a long one, but just enough for the room to register what had been said. It was not a dodge, it was not an empty slogan. It was a full answer, one that balanced truth, principle, and accountability. Colbert's face did not show much at first, but there was a flicker, a tiny shift in his posture. Maybe surprise, maybe respect, maybe just the realization that this was not a usual interview. Mamdani kept going. He spoke about Palestinian suffering, about the decades of occupation, displacement, and death. He talked about how supporting human rights does not mean denying someone else's, that being pro-Palestinian does not mean being anti-Jewish, that justice is not a zero-sum game. He did not raise his voice. He did not make it personal, but his words carried weight, because they came from someone who meant them. Colbert asked about anti-Semitism. Mamdani did not dance around it. He called it real, dangerous, unacceptable. But he also talked about how people use that word to silence criticism, how calling out war crimes is not hate speech, how the pain of one community should never be used to cover the pain of another. The audience was quiet again. No laughter, no cheers, just people listening, really listening. You could feel how careful Mamdani was with his words, but you could also feel how deeply he believed them. He was not trying to win a moment. He was trying to speak truth into a space that rarely allows it. This was not a political stunt. This was a reminder that, in a city built by immigrants, led by movements, and shaped by struggle, there is still room for honesty, even when it makes people uncomfortable. Colbert moved on, but something stayed in the air, a sense that something important had just been said. A line had been drawn, not in anger, but in clarity, and that is why the clip went viral, because people are starving for this. For someone to speak without fear, to say what they actually believe, to trust the public enough to handle the truth. In a political world full of noise, Zohran Mamdani showed up with something simple, a steady voice, a clear answer, and a reminder that leadership is not about pleasing everyone. It is about standing for something. Zohran Mamdani did not just speak out once. He has been consistent about Gaza since the beginning. When bombs started falling and families were fleeing their homes, Mamdani did not wait to see what was politically safe. He joined marches. He stood in the streets. He held up signs calling for a ceasefire while others stayed quiet. He was one of the first elected officials in New York to demand an immediate end to the violence. Not just because it was the right thing to do, but because silence felt like betrayal. For him, justice is not a campaign slogan. It is a responsibility. He has always said that human rights are not negotiable, that it does not matter where people live, what language they speak, or which God they pray to. If they are being killed, displaced, or silenced, they deserve protection. Period. Mamdani believes the United States plays a role in this crisis, not just by sending weapons or money, but by refusing to hold anyone accountable. He has said clearly that U.S. foreign policy cannot keep ignoring the lives of Palestinians while pretending to stand for peace. That sending billions in aid while turning a blind eye to war crimes is not diplomacy, it is complicity. And when critics tried to twist his words or call him anti-Semitic, he did not back down. He explained that being pro-Palestinian does not mean being anti-Jewish, that calling for justice in Gaza is not hate, it is humanity. He pointed out that some of the strongest voices supporting Palestinian rights come from Jewish communities themselves. Groups like Jewish Voice for Peace have marched beside him. They have raised their voices not in spite of their faith, but because of it, because they know that real safety comes from justice, not from silence. Muslim leaders in New York have also stood with him. So have Black activists, Latinx organizers, queer advocates, and students from all across the city. They see in Mamdani someone who does not just talk about intersectionality, he lives it. He connects the dots. He sees how the fight for freedom in Gaza is linked to the fight against police violence in Brooklyn, how housing justice and immigration justice are part of the same struggle, how no one is free until everyone is. When Mamdani speaks, he does not just speak for one group. He speaks for anyone who has been pushed aside, told to wait, or asked to stay quiet. He speaks for the families in Gaza, but also for the mothers in Harlem, the workers in Queens, and the students organizing for change. His voice carries across borders, not because he is louder, but because he is clearer. He is not afraid to name what is wrong and call for what is right. And that is what sets him apart. He does not ask for permission to care. He just does. The moment Zohran Mamdani walked off the Colbert stage, the headlines started rolling in. Some praised him as brave, others called him reckless. In a matter of hours, clips from the interview were everywhere. But what people saw depended on where they looked. One outlet called it a bold moment of moral clarity. Another claimed he had gone too far. Words like radical, dangerous, and divisive started popping up. They took one sentence, stripped it of context, and used it to paint him as someone he is not. Some critics said he was fueling division. They said he was trying to tear the city apart by bringing up painful truths. They claimed his support for Palestine meant he was against Jewish communities. They questioned his loyalty, his values, and even his right to run for mayor. But others saw something different. They saw a politician willing to speak plainly. willing to face uncomfortable questions without hiding behind talking points. Defenders of Mamdani pushed back. They said he was not fueling division. He was exposing it. He was naming what many feel but are afraid to say out loud. On Twitter, the debate exploded. Some people posted clips with captions like, "Finally, someone said it." Others called him a threat. Panel shows brought on pundits to dissect every word. One segment played his answer 3 times, then asked if he had just destroyed his own campaign. But Mamdani did not take the bait. He did not tweet back in anger. He did not hold a press conference to walk anything back. He stayed focused. He kept showing up at events, listening to people, talking about housing, jobs, and safety. He let the noise pass, and kept his message steady. In the middle of all the chaos, his calm stood out. While everyone else shouted over each other, he stuck to the truth. He reminded people what this was really about. Not about one interview, or one viral clip, but about real lives, families in Gaza, communities in New York, a city in need of change. The media wanted drama. He gave them policy. They wanted a fight. He gave them facts. And maybe that is what scares them the most. Because Mamdani is not just talking. He is building something. A campaign that does not rely on spin, but on honesty. One that believes the public is smart enough to handle hard truths. In a world full of noise, he is choosing clarity. That choice may not always be easy, but it just might be what makes him different. This moment on Colbert was not just about a headline. It was about a choice that could shape the future of New York City. Zohran Mamdani is not running a typical campaign. He is not chasing applause or playing it safe. He is taking real stands, even when they come with risk. That moment on national television gave voters a clear look at who he is. Not just his values, but his courage to say them out loud. Other candidates are playing it careful. They talk in circles, dodge the hard questions, and stick to what polls well. But Mamdani is doing the opposite. He is speaking to people who are tired of watered-down promises. He is speaking to people who want honesty, even if it comes with pushback. In town halls across the city, people are talking about it. In Queens, in Harlem, in the Bronx, the conversation has started. Some are still figuring out where they stand. Others already know. But one thing is clear. They are paying attention. Online, the younger generation has jumped in. High school students, first-time voters, young organizers. They saw the clip, shared it, and started asking more questions. Not just about Gaza or Israel, but about housing, jobs, and justice. About what kind of leadership actually speaks for them. Because in 2025, New York is not just voting for a mayor, it is voting for a direction. For a city that either protects the status quo or challenges it. A city that either keeps quiet or finds its voice again. Mamdani's voice is not polished like a career politician. It is steady, clear, and grounded in experience. That is what makes it powerful. That is why this moment matters. This is not just about one answer on one show. It is about what kind of city we want to build next, and who we trust to lead us there. Zohran Mamdani was asked one of the hardest questions in politics. He sat across from Stephen Colbert on one of the biggest shows in America, with the cameras rolling and the pressure high, and he answered with clarity, not calculation. He said what he believed, knowing it could come with a cost. That is what made the moment powerful. Not just the words, but the calm, steady way he delivered them. No hesitation, no backtracking, just honesty. Right there in the spotlight. We always say we want leaders who tell the truth. We say we want people who speak from the heart, not from a script. But when someone actually does it, how do we respond? Do we stand with them, or do we stay quiet? Do we support them when it gets uncomfortable, or do we back away? Because truth is not always safe. It is not always popular. Sometimes it makes people angry. Sometimes it gets twisted, taken out of context, turned into a headline. But it still matters, maybe now more than ever. So ask yourself, what if your truth cost you everything? Would you still say it? What if speaking up meant losing support or facing hate? Would you stay silent, or would you stand your ground? That is what makes Mamdani different. He did not shock Colbert. He reminded us what real courage looks like. Not in shouting, not in showmanship, in showing up, telling the truth, and standing by it. If this moment moved you, if you believe politics should be honest, raw, and human, subscribe, like, and drop your thoughts below. We are building a community that refuses to stay silent.